Hi, Ian. It's good to see you.
Yeah, and you as well, Neville.
Great. We are on day 2 of the Cloud Foundry Summit, and I hope everyone here has enjoyed it as far as I have. Welcome to this Cloud Foundry Summit session, Making a Molehill Out of a Mountain. We will start off by addressing the mountain and the molehill in the room. Most of you have probably heard the saying, making a mountain out of a molehill. Simply put, it is making a big deal of small things. Most of the time, these small things can be fixed by, say, one person. But what about bigger problems? Problems as big as mountains? It is definitely not a one-person job. It requires a collection of people, tools, ideas, everyone, everything coordinating to break down these massive chunks into something as small as molehills. It also does not happen in an instant, not overnight, but really over a long period of time. And today, Ian and I will share with you our story of how we saw this as a mountain of opportunity and hopefully provide all of you some tips on how to replicate them in your own organizations. But Ian, we need to give our viewers some fair warning before we start.
Yes, this is true. So before we climb the mountain, there we go. We'll tell you a little bit about, what we intend to talk about here. So first, this is not a technical talk. We are going to talk a lot about the power of community. So this is about process and people and getting success by working together in a collaborative way. And so what we, are looking forward to sharing with you guys is a really good news story that we've crafted within Comcast to be successful in this collaboration and climbing these mountains together. So let's tell them who we are. I'm Ian Bush. I am the owner of the business operations space within Comcast, so I have responsibility for the billing systems. And I am also a diversity ambassador for our organization. And that is an opportunity where we bring, diversity into our organization and a program that we're very excited about. And I'm excited to be part of it. So at the end of this presentation, folks, if anybody has any questions about that, happy to share that good news besides the good news that we're talking about here. Neville, do you want to tell them a little bit about you?
Yes. My name is Neville George, and I have been with Comcast for about 15 years. I am a platform owner with a focus on developer experience for the past 8 years. I am also part of the leadership network that focuses on bringing application teams together to move resiliency to the left, and Ian, along with me, is a partner in that program. And the next slide.
Yeah.
So, I would say, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I would say our story here started in 2013, Ian. We were moving away from more monolith architectures into more of a microservices architecture. We were embarking on this transformational journey using Cloud Foundry, made some great progress, and it is still continuing to this day. We have dabbed a bit into not just Cloud Foundry, but Kubernetes, public and private cloud architectures, etc. As we were making such great strides in many technology areas, we found mountains of opportunities to make things even better. For one, we were really relying very much on infrastructure being available 100% of the time. Now, a stable infrastructure is key, but if there was a blip on the infrastructure slope, we would ski down all the way. Another area of opportunity was capacity. How can we leverage the best of both worlds, public and private cloud infrastructure? Distribution of not just application workloads, but having that flexibility in their associated data. More often than not, we tend to pick a spot and stay there for a long time, just like your spot at the dinner table. We need to enhance, our applications to be more flexible than ever, and that was a great opportunity that we saw. Ian, can you speak a little bit about some of the opportunities that we saw with dependency dilemmas and trying to minimize the impacts that we have had?
Sure. Yeah. So talking about our dependencies, in many organizations, and Comcast is no different, you have opportunities to understand what the different technologies are that are interacting with each other. So developers build something, and then they build onto that, and then they build onto that. And so you have producers of information and consumers of information. And our opportunity really is to document and understand that, and to sort of maintain a center of excellence where we're able to work together to understand as that ecosphere grows outward. And so that's something that we recognized early on was a mountain that we wanted to tackle. Part of that is when you have scenarios where you do have a large number of dependencies in your systems, is impacts. So system 1 has a problem which impacts system 2, system 3, system 4, and so on. So for us, this was an opportunity to look for, or climb the mountain and look for places where we could effectively, be more successful than we already were at documenting that, tracking that, and really, as we're saying there, minimize impacts. And that was a mountain we wanted to climb as well. So, and I think in the end, and this is something I'd really like to turn over to you and see your thoughts on this, Neville, but we wanted to raise our group IQ. And what we were thinking there is that, like any organization, you have a large number of very smart people, and you want to bring those people together in a community that can make you more successful. So a mountain, that we were looking to climb, and I know we're using that paradigm a lot, but the mountain we wanted to climb was, elevating our group IQ. So do you have anything to add to that?
For sure, no doubt about it. I believe that was a big opportunity for us to get that group IQ factor going. And as you said, we do have a lot of people in many of our organizations who are again, like collaborating with each other and on best practices, innovative ideas, etc. And I think the opportunity for us was to see how do we elevate them throughout the larger organization that we had. And to do all of this, we came up with a few simple things that we want to share with you today so that you can take some of these and maybe implement them in your own organizations as well.
Yeah, a blueprint per se, I think, is a good way to define it, and that's what we have here. So I'll let you start kind of with the executive buy-in and what started the whole process.
Yeah, when we saw the amount of opportunities in front of us, we wanted to ensure that there is enough buy-in from our senior leadership teams, bringing that focus on making our already existing application resiliency even better. In my opinion, having a top-down approach for this and having that kind of executive buy-in really helped the success of our resiliency program. We will share some of the numbers, when we get to the end of the slide to show how well it has worked. And part of it is the fact that we had a lot of executive buy-in from our leadership teams to focus very much on application resiliency and making it better than what it is today. So in order to do this, Ian, we had to pick some leaders to lead a group of people.
Yep. So we modeled the concept of the leaders we were picking sort of on the executive leadership side. So in our space, we created an executive leadership network, which was a group of folks that are thinking about the bigger problems strategically in the organization. And then to pair with that, we created a resiliency leadership network, which was a group of individuals who were passionate about making the systems better, and realizing these opportunities, climbing these mountains together. So we started, working on what types of, folks we wanted to bring to that, to that conversation. And one of the things we realized early on is that we didn't necessarily always need a people leader to drive resiliency. There are engineers who are very interested in solving big problems. And we were looking for those types of folks who were interested in, partnering with us on it. So we have built sort of a healthy mix in our resiliency leadership network of, like I said, the folks that are engineers, as well as there are a couple people leaders in there. Now, we are very much looking at it as this isn't a governance thing. So since the very beginning when I joined, I said, I don't want to be heavy-handed governance. We want to be influential, and we want to work together in a collaborative way. So we were valuing the passion over the principles. Let's work together. Let's look at whatever the opportunity was of the day, and then start to, figure out a way, through the passion of solving, that particular challenge as a thing to, to carry forward. So with that, talking about some of those, challenges or opportunities there, let's talk a little bit about the patterns.
Yeah, I have one more point to add to what you said on pick leaders, Ian. I think we have had this discussion before where we wanted to create this as a sustainable model, right? Like when you become a people leader, or when you become part of the Resiliency Leadership Network, we not want people to feel like this was like a lifelong commitment in this role, but it was more of allowing other people to join in and bring in new perspectives and try and recycle, and people who leave the leadership network take all of the wealth of knowledge that they have got and adopted, back to their organizations. And now we're moving again, on our initiative of moving resiliency more to the left.
Yeah, agreed. It was, like you said, it was about, creating process that could be then infectious throughout the rest of the organization. So,
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So we started exploring resiliency opportunities by looking at a vast amount of data that we have had. I love working with data, and it's amazing when you start connecting all the dots together. One of the very interesting finds that we had in the grand scheme of all the things that we had jotted down as things that we wanted to do for resiliency, we had some really interesting finds. One of them being that during certain summer months, some of our key experience indicators were not up to par. So we started some fun campaigns to raise resiliency awareness during these hot summer months. Ian, you can probably talk to some of the campaigns that we have done before.
Yeah, so I left my Game of Thrones costume in the other room, so I don't happen to have that, but our first was Summer is Coming. We thought that was a pretty neat thing. Everybody was kind of keyed into that a couple years ago. So we said, let's use that as the theme that folks will continue to kind of think about. And what we wanted to do was to say, let's look at what's happened in previous summers, and let's see how we can, have those things not happen, but also in a positive way. What are some of the things we want to see happen? So if folks were having really good, run books, and they were having good, team dynamics where when individuals would go on vacation that other folks would pick up, we wanted to accentuate the positive and, have folks operate in a cool way. Last year, pandemic related, flatten the curve. So everybody knew that phrase about let's try to flatten the curve. And for us, we looked at the opportunity of flattening the curve of impact within the organization, as a result of, some of the dependency challenges we might have faced. So that was our theme. And then in kind of a fun way, and once again, I forgot my raincoat, but we know what you did last summer. It was a neat idea. And, Neville, you came up with that. And I swear, I think we were talking about it at the tail end of 2020. And it was like, I can't wait till we get to the summer and we get to use that theme because it's going to be so much fun to do,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much, a fun way to raise the awareness, keep people engaged. And once people start to hear these things over and over again, it becomes part of your muscle memory. And when the next summer comes, you really might not need a campaign, because this is all very much ingrained in the day-to-day execution of all the application teams.
I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a theme for next year yet?
Oh, I don't know, but I've always considered the I Know What You Did Last Summer had a sequel that said, we still know what you did last summer. I'm not sure that's gonna make it, but we'll find something innovative and fun for everybody.
Absolutely. Yep.
But once we found these patterns, once we had identified opportunities, we put together a list of items that would give us the return of investment on our resiliency efforts. Some of them being deploying of applications to an even better distributed target architecture than what we had at that point. Trying to compartmentalize, application impacts. Ian spoke about this one. In the event of something going haywire in a backend or it becoming unavailable, how can we make sure that we can compartmentalize that and make sure we are available for the most part and not 100% unavailable? There were some great things about war games as well, Ian, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And let's go, and I want to say something sort of the opposite direction on this too, is the idea about we were doing really good things maybe with monitoring or alerting or that type of thing. We wanted to double down on that. And so, I think that's where we're kind of getting to, is these technical imperatives that we were creating were things where we said, we've recognized an opportunity in something. Maybe it's the dependency mapping that we have between a producer and a consumer of data services, that we would like to better track that. So let's go forward with a technical imperative where everyone invests in that tracking mechanism, and then we start to look at that and see where there's opportunities for us to kind of improve the process. So very, very collaborative, and every quarter we would create a technical imperative, which we would then share and prioritize with the teams. And then, the site reliability engineers, who are part of our resiliency leadership network, would carry that back to to their teams and implement these technical imperatives, which then themselves, sort of became a groundswell of additional success and improvement in our community. So I guess talking about, like any maturity model, like any maturity process, there has to be some measurements, right, that we want to look at to sort of determine how successful our program is. So what can we kind of share with folks that we created there?
Mm-hmm. We obviously want to have some kind of measure of the progress that we are making, and something to answer, right? Like, our resiliency efforts that we are putting in, are they producing the return of investment that we are expecting out of it? If our efforts are not working for certain teams, we want to make it visible first and make sure, are we doing the right things for that particular team? Why is it that this works for every team but not for this particular team? And then focus very much on resiliency for that particular application team or application group, instead of just creating new features without building resiliency into them, because we know those are opportunities that are not realized in such situations. Now, this very much ties back into the executive buy-in, right? When we observe these problems, we want to have that executive buy-in to say, yes, us just building out new features without resiliency is something that we want to not do. And I think that very much was a very key point, kind of going back like full circle, making it full circle, to ensure that, again, like our focus is to drive better resiliency into everything that we build as a company, as an application team.
Yeah. So, I've done a lot of work in like capability maturity models and such. You have a storm, and you have a form, and you have a norm, and then you measure, and then sort of, it's a constant cycle kind of, going around. And I think one of the things for us is some of these measurements are a feedback loop to tell us how successful some of the initiatives are. Now, there's a healthy mix, right? We want to be very positive in our messaging. We want to be very positive in the results, but occasionally there are failures. There are things that don't work as well as we'd like. And from those, we've learned, lessons, and we're seeing that. We see a measurement. Now we're looking for an opportunity for improvement. And I think that's where we get into this retrospective concept of, what type of retrospectives are we, doing and having conversations. So what can we share there?
The most important component to any community, I think, is feedback. Everybody should have a voice. The more voices that speak up in the community, the better we can be at achieving, our outcomes. Not just about how are we doing on the opportunities, resiliency goals, we set to achieve. Yes, all that is great, but also asking questions such as, how are we doing as leaders? Are there new opportunities? Do we need to reprioritize? How can we make things better? Did you hear an interesting story or an article? Did you read an article that is going to help us collectively? These are very important things that not just the resiliency leadership leaders bring to the table, but everybody in the community, every SRE who is representing a particular application should have feedback into this process to make sure we are able to achieve our outcomes. The success rate of our outcomes is very much dependent on the number of voices that speak up.
Yeah, I'm going to add one thing there. I think in a lot of organizations, we look at, retrospectives as punitive. So something happened and we have to have a retrospective, or, we completed an iteration, but we don't feel like it went well. And then folks are like, well, we better have a retro on that. Now, for us, I think we celebrate both the positives and the negatives, and we've done that. And so, yeah, there are occasions where you have a conversation about a dependency that didn't go as well as you thought, or your infrastructure didn't perform the way that you thought. But for us, what we've done is said that every time we have an opportunity to, reflect on that, create positive from it, go back and create a technical imperative, or maybe find a new, pattern, that's an opportunity to go forward. And heck, maybe even a crazier thing is the idea about, we find an individual who's particularly insightful about, those types of patterns, and maybe we invite them to become a leader and to help us in the Resiliency Leadership Network spot issues and work together on things, right?
And the best part of a retro is that as much as it might be associated with one particular application, it opens eyes for other teams who are at the same table to say, is my application going to be in the same boat? Have I thought about this? Is this going to impact my application? And now we have all those wheels, churning to look at this as, again, very much an opportunity to improve, what they have currently.
Yeah. So I think we've done a pretty good job of talking about how we've built the community. Should we kind of move on and talk a little bit about, how successful that we've kind of been in this?
Yes. This whole talk would not be worth it if we did not have any numbers to show. The good news, because we still have to show some numbers here, is the fact that in the first year of our implementation of the Resiliency Leadership Network and our focus very much on increasing our resiliency KPIs at the end of year one were up 50%. And in year two, they were 70% better than the first year. So we feel what we have created, again, very much as a community, has been successful. But sometimes it's not just about the numbers. the greater achievement, in my opinion, is that we have built and expanded a community that is happy to share their challenges, success stories with each other, and provide feedback in the process. Ian, your thoughts? Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I would say that we've had some very good rotations of individuals through the group. We've had a lot of great, stories about, I learned this lesson, and so, I want everyone else to go through that. I think what's interesting is that individuals who also have demonstrated this passion for the, for the RLN or for the resiliency, that we've been working on, is some of those folks have actually become people leaders in our organization, and I think that's a very great thing to see, because you want everybody to be working together, and to see that folks are working together as a result of solving difficult challenges, climbing those mountains together, those types of things. It's really resulting in a lot of positiveness. And I guess now I'm on year 3 of being in this mix, and I personally want to stay with it, because every week it's a positive conversation. I enjoy chatting with folks about the the various things that we've observed in the system over the over the last week.
Mm-hmm. So, the great joy for me is when one SRE has a problem, and one SRE has an issue that he needs to go and solve, and everyone else are like, who's again like cross domain, across domains, across various departments, etc. People are ready to jump in and say, hey, we have been there, and here's how we have solved that problem. Is something that is very much of a rewarding experience, for me. And our end goal, I think, has never been to just say we want to achieve a number and we want to stop. But really, I think our end goal is to build a thriving and sustainable community that can collectively focus on resiliency opportunities.
Right. We've created a good process, and a foundation which is repetitive and now has become its own feedback loop. And so, we're constantly looking for these opportunities to look at, okay, how can we make it better? So if our KPI is 70% better in year 2, can we make it 90% better? And I think a funny story is the as we were looking at the numbers for this year, I remember sort of the discussion that we had about what can we do to work on those numbers and make them even better, right? And what are we going to do to make that happen? And that was definitely a fun discussion, because we spend a better part of December kind of working on that, so that we're prepared for the next year, and can continue to keep the machine going, if you will. So yeah, I guess one last thing. I mean, on the scope side, so I was going to say that we were talking earlier about the the way that we continue to collaborate on things. And I think there's scenarios too where there's a learning network where teams are saying, we want to increase what we're doing. Is there anyone that could join us for a short period of time? And so we've seen a little bit of that too, where, oh, I'm an SRE. Hey, can I come help you guys for a couple of weeks? Can I come work in your team? And we've seen a lot of that cross-pollination as well as a result of the program. And so that's the scope is kind of increased there on an individual team basis. And then sum-wise, I think we have a lot of people really now plugged into this, and the size of our group has become very large too.
Mm-hmm.
So
great, Ian. We are at the end.
Yeah, I think so. And so here we are with our Twitter handles. We would love to hear your questions, both here live as well as through Twitter. So feel free to direct message us that way. And definitely, looking forward to the feedback, and seeing how we can help maybe other organizations implement something as cool as what we've done.
Thank you.
So, thank you for having us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Ian. How long have you been with like the Resiliency Leadership Network?
Almost 4 years now, seems like. Yeah. Because I maybe 3. I think it started. Well, I think it's just tipped over 3, right? So
yeah,
been doing it for a while.
2018, at the end of 2018, I believe was when we got started.
Yep. Yeah, and just I guess the thing that's interesting is that how scalable the framework is that we've built at this point. And I think the thing that would be interesting is things that sort of are changing a little bit right now, and a much larger group now. Mm-hmm. The real question is what that's going to look like for us, as we have to scale up. But it's flexible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one thing that we've been very successful is as new teams come on, helping them understand hey, like how do we work, that again our goal is to kind of partner, right? Not to point fingers, but to partner and see how we can make applications better at being resilient, which is very important because sometimes when you're asked questions, it can be defensive, etc. But considering that we have done this for a long time, we're on the same side. That has certainly helped.
Yeah, that we was having that conversation a little bit this morning, talking about sort of the positivity or the power of positivity that otherwise we kind of embrace with the program. And I think the larger your organization gets, the more you're focused on resiliency, the less you want to have recriminations. It's more about what are the positive things that I'm saying or emoting or working with the teams from a process perspective to work through challenges and resiliency, versus sort of saying, why didn't you deploy this? When are you going to do it again? Why didn't you roll it back faster? Just things that are just they're not helpful. I think folks are pretty aware of their mistakes. Yeah. And it's really about how can we help sort of empower or strengthen them, right, is what we've learned from this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, in your opinion, what's like the big if you had to pick one technical resiliency initiative, what would be that one for you?
I think some of the resiliency work a few years or a couple years ago, when we were looking at like post Sandy, like post Hurricane Sandy or something like that, where it was like an inventory. And then it was, okay, well, we found some things were interesting here, and how can we lean into that? And then that got into thinking about the concept of building circuit breakers. Mm-hmm. And without getting, obviously we can't talk about the significant details there, but the idea that, like many organizations, I think you recognize that you have something that's out there that now is suddenly impacted by something writ large. So whether it was a pandemic or a flood or a hurricane, and then just responding to that and coming up with some cool stuff around it to make things more resilient, from that. That's probably one of my favorite things, because I think that was right when I first came in. Mm-hmm. We were really working on the backside of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I think it is simply war games, and again, teams have been doing war games and for a while, but really for us it wasn't just hey, flip a switch, see if everything works, and seeing how the community like some of the members of the community take that like the next level, where it's like, hey, I had this last outage, right? And like I had this incident, and we found out this thing, and we did fix this. So the next war game was like, well, can I simulate the same problem and see if my fix actually works?
Right.
And then other teams like literally, like coming up with innovative ways of just capturing, right? Like, here's when I did the war game. Here are all the positives, and here are the things, and them associating like user stories to say, we are already working on fixing all of this. And then the next war game is going to be just redoing all of the problems that we have had, which again, is again, I think war games, we tend to think of it as like simple things that you can just turn on and off. But people and the community coming up with ideas and people now adopting those as standards for war gaming is like super exciting.
When you create a culture of desire to work on resiliency problems and to come up with creative solutions for that, and then to embrace what are common concepts that we all hear about, like, oh, we created a chaos monkey and the chaos monkey is running around, taking things down, which is a form of the war games. When you open up that opportunity, I think a lot of folks really want to work on it because, we're all engineers and we want to solve problems, and solving those problems as engineers is something that we do. So I agree. I mean, war games it's almost like when you take what I said a couple minutes ago, which was the concept of, creating something that allows us to handle an event, and then having a chance to test that event is good. So
yeah.